This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hello there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. This is the first birthday boy of a brand new month. We're done October, and this man is in. He was a former running back in the CFL. He was twice signed in the NFL, but saw limited playing time. But in Canada, he was basically made to be a king. I wouldn't say a god, because that's not right. Anyway, Pringle was one of the greatest running backs in CFL history. And was inducted to the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. This man was an institution for one specific franchise. Anyway, his name is Mike Pringle, who is now 57 years old. Mike Pringle was born in Los Angeles, attending JFK High School in Granada Hills, California. So in college, he decided to go to Wazoo, aka Washington State. But then he decided to transfer to Cal State Fullerton. And he actually put up 357 yards in a game against New Mexico State, tying the NCAA single-game rushing record. And he had the all-purpose yardage of over 2,600 yards. So, yeah, it would have been nice if Pringle had stayed at Wazoo, but regardless. Surprisingly, he was even drafted. He was drafted in the 6th round by the Atlanta Falcons. So, was it the right move? If you look at the running backs ahead of him, Blair Thomas went 2nd overall to the Jets. That was a mistake. Dallas picked up Emmitt Smith the pick was from Pittsburgh to Dallas, so they took Emmitt Smith 17th overall. That worked. Green Bay took Darrell Thompson. Big mistake. Atlanta took Steve Broussard. Nah, not really that great. Giants took Ronnie Hampton. He made a few Pro Bowls. Dexter Kerr to the Niners. Reggie Cobb to Tampa. Andy Thompson to Phoenix. Anthony Johnson to Indy. Harold Green to Cincy. Cardinal Gardner to Buffalo. Leroy Hoyer to Cleveland. Chris Moore to Seattle. Eddie Fuller to Buffalo. Pat Chapey to Chicago. James Gary to New England. Barry Foster to Pittsburgh in the 5th round. Wow. Brian Mitchell to Washington. That worked out. Cedric Smith to Minnesota. So those were the guys ahead of Pringle by the running back. He was actually on the practice roster for the Falcons throughout the year and dressed for the final 3 games. But he was the final cut of training camp. So he decided to go up north to the CFL, where he would join his fellow Cal State alumni, David Allen and Alan Pitts, going to the CFL. Pringle entered the CFL in time for the 1992 season with the Eskimos. So he was an Edmonton player. In 3 games, Pringle had 129 yards and was respectable. But the Eskimos were not high on Pringle and released him. They decided to go with their 3 Canadian running backs of Michael Souls, Blake Marshall, and Brian Wally. Then he went to the World League of American Football to play for Sacramento before that league folded. And then we resurfaced with the only CFL American team in 93. That was Sacramento, as the CFL decided to expand to the States to try to be more financially viable. Of course, that was a bust. But anyway, yeah, he went to Sacramento. He was an everyday player and put up 4 touchdowns in his only season with Sacramento. But then was traded to Baltimore because Baltimore was trying to get a CFL franchise. Of course, the Baltimore no-namers, as they called them, because they couldn't get Colts or even Stallions or a horse name. So anyway, going into his 3rd CFL season, Pringle didn't really run that much. But he became the starting back in Baltimore after Sheldon Keeney did terribly. Pringle responded to the opportunity and went loose, putting up 1,972 yards. He almost got to 2,000 yards rushing, which would have been very impressive. Well, he had 13 touchdowns. He did set a CFL record for yards from scrimmage of over 2,400. catching those passes and all that, and even returned some kicks and all that. So anyhow, he ran up 165 running yards in 2 playoff games as Baltimore got to the Grey Cup, but fell to BC on a last-second field goal by Louis Pasaglia. So that was a huge ending and all that, as the Stallions were so close and all that. Pringle did well. 95 was a little bit of a drop-off, but it was still an excellent standard. His rushing yards declined to 1791, but that still was pretty good and still was the best in the CFL. In 3 playoff games, he would get 4 touchdown runs for 484 yards. On the strong, powerful legs of Pringle, Baltimore got to the Grey Cup final and took care of Calgary 37-20. So Pringle got his Grey Cup ring and brought the Grey Cup to the States. After his 2 seasons in the CFL, the NFL would have a lot of attention. The Broncos signed him to a free agent deal, but he was late cut from training camp. Denver would ride the running of Terrell Davis, and that was the smart move. With no other NFL teams expressing interest, he went back to the CFL. His rights were still held by Baltimore, but Baltimore in the offseason moved to Montreal, mostly because the Ravens were coming to town via Cleveland in the NFL, and Baltimore had no use for the CFL. As sentiment echoed by the CFL higher up, and basically all the CFL American teams would be disbanded. However, Baltimore didn't completely disband. They just relocated to Montreal because Montreal had a CFL tradition, but because of finances, they lost their team in 1987, and for 9 years they had no CFL. Fortunately, though, the CFL took pity and said Montreal could have a CFL team. And boy, that was a smart move, as Montreal has proven that they will not miss their second chances. Pringle would only play 8 games, 825 yards. Still over 100 yards per game, if you will. Pringle would come through in 97 in a full season and put up over 1,775 yards. It was a strong season and all that. The Alouettes could not do well in the playoffs, and their attendance at Olympic Stadium was flailing and all that. Yeah, you had a 60,000 seat stadium in which, the Alouettes are not doing so well, and the fans are not coming out to it. Montreal made the conscious decision to move to McGill and Percival Molson Stadium, but it was only because of the fact that Olympic Stadium could not host the Eastern playoff game against BC because of a U2 concert. But still, the fans came out to Molson Stadium. Montreal noticed and decided to go to Molson Stadium. So thank you, Bono. Anyway, he would not disappoint. His 98 CFL season was fantastic. He ran for only 9 touchdowns. That's the bad news. The good news is he put up 2,065 rushing yards. The first CFLer to hit 2,000 rushing yards. In fact, he's the only guy to do so, which is kind of strange. I know the CFL is like 17 or 18 games long, but no one's got to 2,000 yards. Pringle would hit his prime with a bang, and he was 31 years old. But still, that season was fantastic. In 99, he put up 1,656 yards. Just 400 yards. So fewer than a shattering 98. However, the Alouettes would still have playoff problems and all of that. Alouettes fans were not too pleased with with getting to the playoffs but just falling. However, the Alouettes in 2000 did well. Pringle put up 1,778 yards and ran for 19 touchdowns. That was a CFL record at the time, so that was amazing what Pringle could do. Using Pringle's legs, Montreal got to the Grey Cup. They got to BC against a team that went 8-10. They should have easily beat BC, but they lost, missing a 2-point convert in the final minute. By the end of the 2001 season, Pringle was 34 years old, an advanced age. He had wear and tear of over 1,300 yards. In 2002, the Alouettes did win the Grey Cup, breaking a 25-year drought for the state of Montreal, but Pringle was not part of it. Pringle was injured much of the year and actually feuded publicly with head coach Don Matthews, who did not believe in Pringle's abilities and used Lawrence Phillips, or he who shall not be named, but I just named him, as a starter even when Pringle was healthy. Pringle was bitter and left to join Edmonton in 2003. Well, I mean, who could blame him? It was a return to form. Edmonton believed him and put up 1,376 yards, his best total in 3 years, and got the Eskimos to win the Grey Cup, ironically against the team that didn't show him love in 2002, the Owls. Of course, I'm an Owls fan, I'm ticked off. Pringle wanted to break George Reed's record for career rushing yards and career touchdowns. A lot of people said that he could break them. 2004, he did his job. So Pringle ran for 1,141 yards, 4th place. However, he got the record. He broke it in BC against the Lions. So there was some happiness. The season ended on bitterness for Pringle. In the last game of the season, the Eskimos were close to the goal line in a tight game. Pringle had 137 touchdowns, which was tied for the CFL record with George Reed, and needed one more to break it. However, the head coach called the quarterback sneak instead of Pringle's running attack. Pringle was not too happy with everything. So he decided to retire from pro football after the 2004 season, leading the CFL all-time with 16,425 rushing yards and 137 touchdowns, although that was tied with George Reed. However, he was 6-time rushing champion in the CFL. He officially filed retirement papers with the Alouettes so he could retire as an Alouette. And in the season opener in 2005, Pringle's 27 would be retired. In 2008, he would be inducted to the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. It's how amazing that Mike Pringle was at his late 20s, early 30s, where most running backs would fall off the map, but he didn't. He was a king. 16,425 rushing yards for Edmonton, Sacramento, Baltimore / Montreal, and then Edmonton again. It's amazing to think, what if he had, in 96, when he only played 8 games, he came to the season late from the Broncos training camp. What if he was with the Alouettes the full season? He would have had the touchdown record, obviously. But still, it was just amazing how he played the game and he played the CFL well. And that's all there is to it. Anyhow, I'm going to do